everybody. How you doing today? This is Saucony Prince of SauconyPrince.com, where we make motivation personal, introducing you to yourself. And I want to welcome you to the H.E.A.L podcast. H.E.A.L is an acronym for Help, Elevate, and Learn, and it's based on my latest book with the same title, but the subtitle is It's a Guide to Healing Your Inner Child. I'm so excited to be able to bring these podcasts to you because I know that they're making a difference in people's lives. They are raising the awareness of how sometimes we have current day behavior that was seeded in our childhood. But each podcast actually has a sponsor, and this one has none other than our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable, it is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SauconyPrinceHeal or choose Saucony Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. And we want to thank BetterHelp for being a sponsor of our podcast. I tell you that there are a lot of people that tune into the podcast and they get insight and information that they can use starting today instead of one day. They can start day one instead of one day. And I am so excited for our guest today because I know he has some information that's going to help change our lives. So I'm going to bring him to the stage. My new friend, Mr. Chris McBride of the McBride Institute. Chris, you there?
Yes, sir. Are you able to hear me?
I'm able to hear you, man. All right. Go on and introduce yourself.
My name is Chris McBride of the McBride Institute. Right now, I help professionals who are haunted by emotional wounds or emotional scars to actually heal those inner child wounds, to restore broken relationships, and also to master inner conflicts.
Wow. That is so needed, especially in today's society. So, well, I know we got some questions, but I just want to start off with this one right here to see, how did you get started in this field?
Really, just I would assume, like a lot of us who are in this field, just dealing with my own trauma. Growing up in a certain environment, experienced a lot of things from childhood bullying to molestation to abandonment or perceived abandonment because my father wasn't really around like that. Low self-worth, low self-esteem, and really having a lot of internal challenges and just working to kind of find internal alignment and internal peace throughout my life. And as you do that, you start to develop certain tools. So then once you are able to master certain things yourself, then you're equipped to be able to help other people. So that's kind of how I got started in this work.
Right. I tell people all the time, you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, then that's logical step is to lead other people. And so, again, I want to just take my hat off to you because I know it's hard enough for us to unpack our own baggage. But in fact, when you take on the huge responsibility of helping somebody else, again, in my book, that makes you a hero. So thank you.
And to your point, you can only take people as far as you've actually taken yourself or as deep as you taken yourself. So that is something that I do kind of warn people about in this industry. I wish there was a certification for people who did our type of work that you had to prove that you've done work yourself as opposed to trying to guide people without doing no work yourself.
Right.
That's something that I kind of warn people about when it comes to looking for somebody to help guide you. Make sure that they've done internal work themselves and they didn't just read a book or just went to class or something like that and they're trying to give you theory. We're talking about real life experience.
That's true. That's so true. So, man, let's jump into some of these questions because and I have gotten differing opinions and different answers on these questions, but they all have come from a place of authenticity. So I know yours are going to be the same. So our first question is, in your professional opinion, how important is inner child healing?
It's extremely important. Our childhood trauma can become our adulthood patterns. meaning that if you grow up in a certain situation and you are constantly victimized, you might find yourself victimizing other people. If you grow up in a certain situation around a womanizer, you might find yourself becoming a womanizer. If you
Right.
grow up and you are constantly bullied, you might find yourself bullied. So unless you deal with that inner childhood trauma, then you might end up repeating the same things. Also, our childhood solutions become our adulthood problems. So if you grow up
Mm.
in a situation in which emotional suppression was in your household, and anytime you try to express emotion, you got ridiculed, you got ostracized, you got made fun of, you got punished, whatever it is, then you
Mm.
develop emotional suppression to survive that particular environment. Now, that's okay for that environment because that's a childhood solution. But
Right.
as you become older, that childhood solution will become an adulthood problem because now you can't form intimate relationships. You are afraid to actually express what's going on. You're afraid to be vulnerable because you're applying the same childhood tendencies to a new environment. Or let's
Right.
just say you grew up around a lot of aggression. So you develop those aggressive tendencies because without that aggression, you would have got torn to shred in your childhood environment. But now
Right.
you're older and everybody's like, yo, you a little intense, man. You a little aggressive, and it's running people off, or it's causing you to lose work opportunities or friendships or romantic relationships. So our childhood healing is so important. And most people don't really realize that it is our unresolved childhood wounds that is driving a lot of our tendencies as adults.
That's so so true. And I tell you just how important it is when it starts to impact your life on a day to day basis or even in a relationship, it becomes problematic, in fact, to say the least. And so, just being willing to identify, because again, I know a lot of people, they'll just say, well, this is just where I am. And I tell people, it's not what you do, but why you do it. And if you don't take a look at the why, you'll always keep repeating the what. And
Yes.
so, it's important for us to be that objective.
And to that point,
Mhm.
it's not who I am. It's not who you are. It is who you were conditioned to be based upon your life experiences. And this is the important thing of separating our identity from our behavior. Because so many times people are just like, oh, that's just who I am. And if
Right.
the strongest force in the human personality is to remain consistent with how it defines itself. So if you keep saying that this is just who I am, that's just who I am, you won't be able to act any other way consistently.
Mm.
Will
Yeah.
always, you won't even have to put no effort or no energy into acting out that idea that you already believe you are. So we do have to heal that because it shapes who we are. It shapes what we feel relationships should be. It impacts our self-worth. It impacts our trust. It impacts our ability to be able to regulate ourselves emotionally. It impacts our relationships. So yes, it we do have to deal with our childhood trauma and stop this it's just who I am because it's not who you are. It may be who you are currently choosing to be because whatever you don't change, you are maintaining. And whatever you don't change, you are choosing, but it's not who you are.
That's true. That's so 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 true. So, in fact, the next question says, in your professional opinion, when should someone start inner child work?
The moment you recognize unhealthy patterns, the moment you keep seeing certain things showing up from your childhood. If you grew up and your father was extremely volatile and you find yourself being volatile, either in your romantic relationships or in your parenting relationships or in your friendships or even in your work experience, as soon as you start to recognize, like, man, because a huge thing or a huge theme in my life is who you resent, you become. So if you're finding yourself becoming all of these things that you didn't like or you didn't want to experience as a child, then you got to do those particular things. If you are grew up in an environment, and let's just see, like for me, I constantly see my father with different women growing up. You know, it was rare. He didn't really develop long-term relationships until I got, for the most part, maybe like 16, 17 years old. But prior to that, literally every time I seen him, he was with a different woman. Now, kids are great observers, but terrible interpreters. So it's not like my father was like, you need to be with different women. You need to have a high body count. But because of my observation and because kids are to be seen and not heard, nobody ever challenged the conclusions or the meanings that I put to the things that I observed. So I thought that to be a man, you got to have a high body count. You got to just roll through women. So I struggle being able to commit to women. I always was trying to just become a high body count person. When people knew me my first 2 years, 3 years in college, they was just like, bro, you getting everybody out here. And to me, I'm thinking that that's a notch on my belt. I'm thinking that that's a badge of honor. I'm not
Right.
realizing that I'm just hypersexualized because of what I'm witnessing through my particular childhood, or just volatile, being extremely impatient. That's what would happen with a lot of my parents. Now, it ain't about blame, it's about explanation. So a lot of my parents were impatient with me. I found myself when I had my son is about to be, he's 3.5 now, being very impatient with them. So I'm repeating things that actually happened to me in my particular childhood. So once you become aware of any destructive pattern that seems to keep replaying itself in your life, that is when you need to address it.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, wow. Wow. I'm really, I'm really grateful the fact that you shared that personal testimony because, in fact, you talk about how children are great observers, but they're not great interpreters of what they observe. That spoke volumes to me because I knew I have a good friend of mine, in fact, Dr. Charles Dent. He oftentimes says that as a child, we don't have the language to articulate what's happening to us or what we're seeing, but we have produced this, this definition, and it's not until we get older in life that we realize that there are things that have, happened to us, or things that we've seen, things that we observed, and they have become a part of us. And like I tell people all the time, what happened to you may not have been your fault, but it is your responsibility. And that means that you have the responsibility to heal from whatever hurt you, whatever the situation was. And you can, and just go down the litany or the list. It may not have been your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. Listen,
I
we have
agree
a couple of people.
wholeheartedly. Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was saying, I agree wholeheartedly with that, because that's why I said earlier I had perceived abandonment, because kids are great observers but terrible interpreters. So I'm witnessing that my father wasn't really around like that. And because that's how I interpret, that's the meaning that I put to it, is that I was abandoned. It wasn't until I got older and I learned my father's story that his father wasn't around at all. He gave my grandma 6 kids, did completely. So in his mind, what he thought a man was, because his mom was constantly, financial issues. She's trying to take care of 6 kids. Both of her parents were murdered when she was 6 weeks old. She had no siblings. So she's raising 6 kids with no parents, no siblings, and all that, to be able to help, really no support. So it was a lot of financial pain that my father and all that witnessed. It was a lot of wearing hand-me-down clothes and getting joned on because you got holes in your clothes and all that at school. Now, even though I didn't see my father a lot, never been evicted, not one time. Don't even know what an eviction notice looked like. Also, never had to wear hand-me-down clothes. Like, I would come home and I would just have Fat Farm, Pelly Pill, Shine John, all this other stuff on my bed. I wouldn't see my dad, but so in his mind, based upon his childhood experience, he knocked it out of the park. But because, like you said, we're not great interpreters, so nobody really challenged my thinking. I grew up thinking I had abandonment issues whole time. That's why me and my father have a pretty close relationship to this day, is because I was able to let that go and reframe that I really wasn't abandoned. In his mind, he was doing an A+ as a dad compared to what he experienced as a particular child. So yes, this is why if you got kids, don't wait until something manifests in their behavior. Keep in track of what's going on in their particular mind, because this is why people have low self-worth, things that they experience in their childhood. Damn, I must not be valuable because dad's not around, or because mom's not around, or dang, dad and mom broke up, man, it got to be because of me. That's the bad interpretation. They attribute everything negative to themselves. And again, we don't really check it until it starts manifesting in behavior. I see a kid that got uncontrollable rage, I automatically know he got daddy issues. Your dad's not around. Nah, he's not around, or he is around, but he's, physically there, but not emotionally there, or not mentally there, and all that stuff. I don't really got no close relationship with him. It's like always, I can tell when a man got uncontrollable rage, a lot of times it's daddy issues. So, or a low self-worth. I was had the conversation with my nephew the other day. Most of us are extras in our own movie. We got to start learning to become the main character
Character,
in our
right.
own movie. But if I never inquired what was going on in my nephew's mind, he would have carried that low self-esteem with him all the way until he's an adult, and then he decides to go to therapy. So yes, we just got to start challenging what's going on in the children's mind.
Amen. Amen. Hey, listen, I want to share some of the comments that you've had so far. In fact, Dr. Ladon says so true. In fact, the bullied can become the bullied. We also have another comment, in fact, which said it's important to heal your trauma. Uh, Facts. And my wife, she agrees. She said, yes, Dr. Ladanya. More is caught than taught. And that's true. That's true. That comment we got is amen. Be accountable for your own stuff. It's all about choices. And that is so, so true. Juan, in fact, Richardson has said, in fact, this is great info, and I'm so glad that you're enjoying it. Next comment we have from Dr. Danya, in fact, the reason why communication is challenged, interpretation. And that is so, so true. You know, we have to make sure that we are doing our due diligence. I remember, and I'm well, in fact, I'm assuming that you remember fax machines. You know, they used
Yeah.
to have this thing that they call a handshake. So, like, okay, when you would dial it, you would hit his tone, and it'd be waiting for the other fax machine to answer, and then they would kind of do like a handshake signal to say, "Yes, I'm ready to receive. Yes, you can send it." If you didn't get the handshake signal, the information didn't go. If in our communication we had that type of connection to where people were, I'm ready to receive and you're ready to see, I believe we would get more stuff done than we would just kind of again talking over each other, talking at the same time. So yeah, it's so
But I also
important for.
think it's about approach. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
I
no,
think it's
go ahead,
about
go ahead.
approach too, because I remember when I was 16, I tried to, I had one approach when talking to my father, and just somebody told me write down everything that he did to hurt you and just go tell it to him. And as you could imagine, that didn't go over well. He was just like, if I'm a bad father, you a bad son. And I didn't have another emotional conversation with my dad till I was around 28. So that happened at 16. And then 28 is when I changed my approach and have a different conversation. But I started to think like, somebody's just coming at me and they're like, you did this, you did this, you did this. I'm gonna get defensive. Everybody's gonna get defensive. So it was really about the approach that I did. So then at 8 or 28, I just asked the question. I'm like, Dad, do you think I harbor negative feelings towards you? He was like, I don't think you harbor negative feelings. I just think that you think I probably could have been a better dad. And I'm like, man, Dad, I just want you to know, based upon your experience, I feel like you was the best dad that you knew how to be. Based upon your dad and your mental Rolodex of what you created as far as a father figure or archetype, based upon what you witnessed, you didn't get exposed to all the great fathers that I got exposed to. Now, if you did, we'd be having a different conversation, but you didn't get exposed to that. So based upon what you got exposed to and what was in your mind, I feel like you did the best that you could be. And he paused. He got very quiet. Then he took a very deep breath and he started crying. And he was just like, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you saying that. And without me having to say anything, he immediately took accountability for everything. Man, I'm sorry. I should have been there for you, man. I should have been around more, man. I should have been at your sporting events. I should have been somebody that you could talk to. I should have been all of these things basically that I wanted him to say when I was 16 years old. But I triggered defense in him as opposed to be able to have a conversation where he could remain open to be able to receive what I'm saying. So a lot of times we want to put the onus on just the receiver and not have the onus ourselves as the person that is trying to communicate. You are the one. We have an intended message and received message. It is up to the person speaking to make your intended message the received message in that person's brain, which can be very tricky because you got to bypass emotional triggers. And me and you right now, we're calm, so we're in our neocortex. That's the executive suite of the brain. That's what allows us to be able to reason and process all these different things and have perception and memory and all. But once we get triggered emotionally, we go into our limbic system. Then that's a refractory state, which basically means you can only process information that justifies the emotion that you're in. So if you are
Yep.
angry, you're only going to be able to think about things that make you angry in regards to me. If you're sad, you're only going to be able to think about things that make you sad in regards to me. You won't be able to reason or process. This is why when a person gets triggered, it seems like they start acting like kids and they can't really hear anything you saying. And you like, bro, that's not what I said, because it's going through their emotional memory now. They're not. So once a person's triggered, the focus should not be trying to get your point across. The focus should be on calming that person down, because the moment they're back in their neocortex, then they'll be able to reason. But if they're emotionally triggered, they ain't about to be able to hear nothing you say. And if you trigger them even further to their reptilian system, then that's fight or flight. They really ain't about to be able to hear nothing. They either gonna fold, want to retreat, or want to get mad aggressive with you.
Wow, wow. That was a masterclass. I'm just telling you that for real, for real. And I love what you shared about. Okay, so going back to the conversation that you had with your dad, in fact, when you were 28, you would have to credit yourself with having a level of maturity to be able to do that. Correct?
Yeah, definitely emotional maturity for sure.
Yeah. Because I mean that to that's what's needed in order to get that sort of, again, that sort of connection established, to where that information can flow back and forth. So this is so good. All right, so we got some other comments here. I think Dr. Diane said, in fact, when people get defensive, in fact, my question is there any truth in it? And I think all of us, we can definitely we can ask ourselves that question, especially from the people that, in fact, from the people that really care about us. If they're telling us something and it may sting, it may hurt, instead of just looking at it as an attack. And of course, in fact, you have to consider the motives. Like, why are they saying it? And is there any truth to it? I think that that's important for us to be open enough and mature enough to even accept or just receive something uh, in reference to ourselves.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then so it's like people, we got to reframe what we think conflict is and what we think tension is. I love in the book, Love and Respect, it talks about how tension is more so like a little fire, right? And so in any relationship, sparks are naturally going to fly, but it's
right.
about, are you going to let those sparks transition into something that can be a utility for you and create a nice warm home for your environment? Or are you going to let it be a wildfire and burn down the whole fire, burn down the whole house, burn down your relationship? I look at it like electricity. When it ain't harnessed and channeled, it becomes dangerous and it can kill you. But when it is channeled properly, it becomes a utility that benefits everybody. And that's how tension is. That's the only way you could really see what's going on. That's the only way you could really see honestly what's in a person's mind. We don't always got to agree, and we got to learn to not take disagreement as I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, or like a personal slight to each other. We need to be able to have that tension and not look at it as, oh, that means that you're abandoning me or you're leaving me. Those childhood wounds coming out in conversations. That's why people need to be able to heal, because you ain't gonna be able to hear the truth. You're gonna be too emotionally fragile. You're gonna be too emotionally immature to be able to hear what somebody's really saying. You're gonna be taking it as a personal attack, as opposed to, I forgot who it said, but entering the mind of the speaker, which is instead of trying to fit whatever they're saying into your perception already,
Right.
literally hear what they're actually trying to say. What is they're trying to say from their actual heart? A lot of times we need to have a meeting of the minds, because when we go into a dictionary, words be having all these different type of meanings. Now, when a person's speaking, we just assuming we know what they mean, as opposed to being able, like the doctor said, being able to ask certain questions to be able to clarify, as opposed to getting defensive.
That's true. That's true. That's true. So, how does trauma show up in life and in relationships?
It can show up in all different types of ways. Let's just say your trauma is shutting down. So that can just show up like you grew up in a certain environment where your parents were super volatile. You shut down all the time. So now in your romantic relationships, anytime a difficult conversation comes, you shut down and you don't necessarily want to speak, which harms intimacy. Or the opposite, you are super volatile and you just blow up, because that's what you actually witnessed all the time. Is that's how conflict was actually handled. It was just yelling and screaming and throwing stuff and hitting and all these other things, and we'll tend to repeat it all the time. Or again, emotional suppression. You just don't want to say anything. You just don't, your fear of vulnerability, that can actually show up. Fear of failure can actually show up. You could have a situation where your parents never was in consistent relationships. That was a huge thing for me. I struggle with, do I know how to keep a relationship together? Because anytime a relationship happened and me and my fiance, this is something I'm personally still dealing with. When challenges happen, I'll be, and I ain't got to deal with this, man. I could be gone. Like, that's something I've still to this day, that's deeply ingrained in me. I'm still working on that, learning and believing that I know how to stay in a particular relationship, because I didn't see that really growing up. Like I said, my father was always with different women, and my mom never really had like healthy relationships and all that stuff. And she's single to this particular day. Now, my dad is married now. He's been with the same woman since I was around 16 years old. But prior to that, he was with all different types of women. So trauma can show up in all different types of ways. Let's just say you were bullied and all that. So now anytime a person gives you some criticism, you just shut down all the time, or you start getting insecure and you can't hear the actual truth. So you can't even be accountable, because we can't talk about what you did, because every time a person says something, you're so emotionally fragile because you think back to when you were, you know, 7 years old on the playground and Susie said you was ugly or whatever, or Susie said, that you ain't gonna be nothing in life, or your teacher says something and you're just still insecure. So it can show up in so many different ways.
That's true. That's true. And that's one of the reasons why, again, I wrote the book, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have this podcast, because, I mean, I have sold more copies of this book than any of the previous books that I've written. But I wanted to keep the conversation going. And like I oftentimes say during this podcast, we're not here to end the conversation. We just want to start it. In fact, we want to make it to where people can talk about situations like this in a non-threatening moment and really see, is there any work that I need to be doing? Is there anything that I need to focus on and to actually get better at? Because if we don't have these conversations, again, we'll keep repeating these patterns. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, because that's something I look for too, is patterns and how they show up. And if we don't observe those, if we don't pay attention to those, like, we can find ourselves again circling the same mountain, going around the same thing over and over again, and not really understand. One of the ladies on my podcast, in fact, she said that someone is just dating the same person with a different face. I was like, wow, the same person with a different face.
And
So
that's another reason why, yes, we got to heal. A lot of men come to me, breakups and all that stuff, trying to heal from a breakup. And I'm like, all right, well, who ended it? Oh, they walked away and all that. Is that a pattern? Now that I think about it, yeah, a lot of my girls walk away. It's just we don't even really realize that they call it an object of displacement. So we're not even really dating the person that's in front of us. We are dating the mental conception that we have, and it's really just all the people in our past. And that's why I always say making the person in your present pay for the mistakes of the person in the past will equal a future with nobody. That's why it's so important to actually stay here. But that's also why when you're dating somebody or when you're coming together in relationship, you need to understand personal history, family dynamics, childhood trauma, past relationship trauma, because that is what's going to show up. Like, and you got to be able to, and we all crazy. We all got this stuff in us. And we just, your crazy is different from my crazy. My crazy is different
exactly,
from Beyonce crazy. So it's just about finding somebody that we have understanding, we can give grace to, because we want grace when we triggered and we fly off the handle. We like, you know what? Yeah, what? I just snapped on her and that didn't have nothing to do with her. That has something to do with, like, for instance, I had just stopped smoking weed. It's been a couple of weeks and all that. When I first stopped, because I was a huge habit of doing it for weeks. Um, and so when I first stopped, I would just sweat a lot when I actually stopped doing it. And so when me and my fiance was talking the other day about it, she was like, you still got the jitters? And I was just like, I ain't had no jitters. Why? Who said anything about some jitters? I said that I'm sweating at night. Jitters. And I found myself triggered. And I'm just like, why am I getting mad at her for just saying the word jitters and all that stuff? That got something to do with me, because I had a long habit of smoking weed. And I got uncles and all that stuff like that who did harder drugs. And my mom would always, as soon as I start smoking weed, you ain't gonna be like your uncles. You ain't gonna. And that's what it all triggered, is how my mom would look at me smoking weed and thinking I'm about to do heroin or do all these other things. And that's what came up in that conversation. I'm like, that ain't got nothing to do with her. Let me just calm down. Let me deal with it, because that's me.
right,
Communicate to her like, yo, that ain't really got nothing to do with you. Let me process it, get it out, and then move forward. But a lot of times, if we don't got the emotional maturity and the awareness to be able to know what our triggers are and why we actually trigger, we gonna keep making the people in our present pay for the stuff in our past, and they ain't got nothing to do with it. They didn't cause it, so they can't heal it. We got to actually do it. They can just create a safe space where we can talk about it and we can heal it, but they can't fix it, especially if we refuse to acknowledge it.
that's true. That's so true. So, what do you believe is the biggest obstacle when it comes to inner child healing?
People wanting to look at it and deal with it. A lot of people feel like just because you've learned how to handle it, that you've healed, that you've learned how to live with it, that you've healed. And
Mm,
that ain't the case. You know what I'm saying? You're still carrying it on your back, and you've just learned how to live in dysfunction. But the hardest thing is really people being able to see themselves. Me and my fiance is reading a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. And most of us are just living in self-deception. We're quick to be able to see everybody else's faults, but we ain't trying to look at our own. And that's really the biggest thing, is people don't want to see themselves accurately.
right. That's so true. I know a lot of people have a hard time doing that, and you know, we have to be honest with ourselves, and that's one of the reasons why I try to have conversations in a non-threatening moment. Because when somebody feels threatened, in fact, when they feel like they're being attacked, then no, in fact, they're not in objective mode. They're not able to look at themselves because they are in fact defense mode. And so I know how important it is to be in that space, that mental space, to where we can step back and look at ourselves. You got a couple more comments here. This is from Juan Richardson. He says, "Speak, sir." Appreciate you, Doc. And he also added this. He said, "Uncomfortable conversations are necessary," and that is true. We have to be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations. We have another comment here from Dr. Ladine. She says, "A lot of times we will blame others for our pain and without seeking to understand their unhealed patterns and refuse to forgive."
Facts.
We have to make it a point that, the same amount of grace that we expect and that we would like to have for ourselves, we need to have that for other people. And I tell people all the time, that scripture that says, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself," I honestly believe like one of the biggest challenges that we have in our society is a lack of self love. Because if I don't care anything about me, if I don't care what happened to me, if I don't really love me, I can care less about you. But if I spend some time understanding who God made me to be and appreciate that, I can see the value in yourself, but I have to first see it in me. I have to love my neighbor as I love myself. But if I'm struggling to love me, it's going to be real hard for me to love my neighbor.
And a lot of times it's going to be hard to love ourselves without, like they said, forgive. We got to
Yeah,
be able to forgive, because a lot of times people feel like forgiveness is letting the other person off the hook. When actuality, forgiveness is letting yourself off the hook, freeing yourself. I tell people, one of my friends is struggling to forgive his dad, and he just wants his dad to apologize for the messed up things that he did in his life. And I'm like, bro, what you're doing is locking yourself in a cell and hanging the key outside the door and just hoping your dad gonna come one day and just grab the key and unlock the door. Now there's a chance he might, but there's also a chance that he won't. And so like anger, being angry is like drinking poison but expecting somebody else to die.
right.
Anger do way more to the vessel it's stored in than anything it can be poured on. So we think that by still holding on to all these past hurts and past traumas, it ain't doing nothing to the person we angry at. Most of the time, the person we angry at, we done blocked off and we ain't even dealing with that person no more. We're the ones that still holding all the pain. That person living their life, not even thinking about us at all. So forgiveness ain't about that person. Forgiveness don't mean reconnection. Forgiveness don't mean reconciliation. Forgiveness don't mean that they can abuse you again or access. Forgiveness just means that I'm getting the disappointment, the frustration, the pain, the hurt, the anger out of my heart, so I can be emotionally free to be able to receive the things that I'm saying I want. Most of us say we want a healthy relationship, but if you want a healthy relationship, you got to let go of the toxicity from the past, because otherwise you're going to bring that past into it, and who you resent, you end up becoming. So you're resenting your last partner, but you're going to end up turning into your last partner for the new person that ain't did nothing to you. The last
Wow.
person is cold and hearted to you, so you cold and hearted now, but this person ain't done nothing to you, so now you being all the thing that you said you hated in your last relationship, you showing up as in this new relationship. Anytime a person comes to me and they're like, "I'll never let a person do that to me again. I ain't never about to let this," that automatically let me know you toxic. You in a toxic place right there, because you ain't
Wow.
even dealing with that person that did it to you no more, but you bringing that energy to all these people that ain't done nothing to you. You got to be able to heal, because otherwise you going to repel or self-sabotage any
Yeah,
good that comes into your life.
that's true. That's true. Let's see. We got some more comments here. In fact, Dr. Don said, "Yes, forgiveness is for you. Free yourself." Warren Richardson says, "Forgiveness is for me." He made it personal. That's so true. And then, in fact, Dr. Don said, "You better speak." And let's see. Warren Richardson said, "Unlock the chains of unforgiveness." Wow. Wow, man, listen. Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to have you back. I know I'm going to give you some time, but definitely, man, some great information. We got a couple of more questions here, and then we're going to get ready to wrap up. Our fifth question is, do you believe that people can do inner child therapy or work alone?
I do believe that once you learn some strategies, you can do self coaching. But ultimately, I believe that I believe it was the gene theory by Richard Dawson. He says simulation is always better than trial and error. The issue with trial is that it takes time, and that's, what I'm saying, time is limited for us. And then error could be fatal. You can make one mistake and it could ruin your relationship, your opportunities, or your life. So the thing that gives us dominion is our ability to simulate. We don't gotta make all the mistakes ourselves, because I can watch somebody do something, the mirror neurons kicking in my brain, and I can simulate it in my mind, and then I can expedite or streamline my particular process. So I'm a firm believer in find somebody who has the results you want and simulate. Find somebody who has traveled the path, who was where you're at and who's where you want to be, and simulate the process so you ain't got to keep making all the mistakes. You can turn decades into days. Now, again, you can reinvent the wheel if you want to, but ain't no telling if you're going to actually get the result that you want. So I'm big on find a mentor, a role model that has the current results that you want, that was in the place that you were in, and learn everything that you can from that particular person. Then once you got strategies, then you can self-coach from there. But you don't want to start off with self-coaching. I don't believe you do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So how can somebody help others who may be struggling to identify their need for inner child work?
Shoot, just recognize the pain. So if you recognize the pain and the patterns that keep showing up, so it's just like, man, keep every time I think I'm in a relationship and I feel like this is the one, and it always ends. Okay, so do you want to keep that pattern going, or do you maybe want to start addressing those particular wounds that's driving that? Man, every time, like, I feel like I want to say something, but I just shut down anytime, like, I get emotional because I feel like this person's gonna judge me, or this person's gonna leave me, or this person's gonna reject me, or whatever it is. Okay, so do you want to actually address that, or do you want to keep suffering in that particular pattern? So a lot of time when the pain kicks in is the best time to be able, because a person's open, especially as we get older. This is why they say it's hard to teach old dog new tricks. It's
Right.
not impossible to. It's just as we get older, the only way to really learn is from pain. So once a person is in their pain, they open.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if Dr. Diane, she said, and get some sound counseling. Yes, yes. All right. So our last question here says, how can people start the conversation about inner child trauma?
Um, Share your journey, because a lot of times, people will start to identify different things that happen. So if you're comfortable just sharing your journey, I talk about things that happened to my father and all that, how I was able to mend that particular relationship. I talk about my struggles in regards to, figuring, believing whether or not I can keep a family together or a relationship together. I talk about my struggles in regards to help, regulating myself in regard to parenting, because, I didn't really grow up around regulated people. I grew up around people that violent. I talk about some of the things I grew up. I was with not a therapist, but one of my coaches, and she was just like, when I was talking to her about things, I think is what I experienced. She's a Chinese woman, so she was just like, and I was like, damn, I guess and I guess it wasn't normal watching your reaction to it. So
You were giving her a tissue.
she
You
was
were consoling her.
she was like, damn. But when I just talk about it, what I'm saying? I brought up a memory or whatever that I had of me and my cousin. We might have been like 7, and we like threw our clothes in the washer and all that stuff. And literally, that's all we did. And we got beat. I remember my uncle put my cousin between his legs, and he was just working them. And I'm just standing there like, and then my aunt came with an extension cord and just beat the brakes off of me and all that for it. And it was just like, she was just like, and I was just like, oh, well, and now that even made me realize, like, okay, I still got stuff that I got to deal with, because I didn't even think about that until she brung that thing out of me. So a lot of times, just having conversations, being able to go back to your childhood environment. So go back to your old school and just walk through and see what memories come up. Go to your old dwelling, wherever you lived as a particular kid. And, even if somebody lives there, just knock on the door and be like, I'm just trying to retrieve certain memories that I might have blocked out. Is it cool if I just kind of walk through? I went through my old childhood bedroom, and all different types of memories started coming up, and I just wrote them down. Like, all right, I got to deal with that. 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 So that's
Wow.
kind of the best way, either having conversations, going back to places that you frequent as a particular kid, talking to maybe your siblings that you grew up with, your parents, your aunties and uncles, whoever you were around a lot of times, and having those particular conversations.
Wow. Wow. And I never really thought about that, but I'm glad you mentioned that about being able to actually go back. Because in my book, I talk about reparenting yourself, and how important it is that we can still have. it's still possible, in fact, for us to have a happy childhood if we heal that part of ourselves. And doing that, going back to those places, uh, dealing with those memories, writing them down, and processing our emotions is so important. Man, listen,
And
this has been a
I
go ahead,
wanted to just quickly be able to give some quick solutions and all that to be able to process memories, if that's okay.
go ahead, yes, sir.
Well, people don't change through words, people change through experience. So what I want you to do is I just want you to think about something that somebody said to you that when you think about it, it still makes you feel a certain type of way that you don't want to feel. Don't tell me what it is, but just let me know when it's in your mind and you feel it in the body.
Got it.
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to keep that person saying that same thing, but just switch it to Pinocchio. I'm a real boy. And just let me know what happens in your nervous system. They say the same thing, but just change the tone to that Pinocchio voice. What happens?
It diffuses it. It takes the power away from it.
And it makes it so that it lowers the emotional charge. Okay, so that's one thing. You know what I'm saying? So anytime you got a voice in your head, most of the time what you're responding to is the tone that's locked into your nervous system as well. And if it's a convincing, mean, aggressive, whatever it is, tone, that's what causes the emotional charge. So shifting the tone of voice to something that you can't take serious anymore. The gingerbread cookie from Shrek. Beat on the muffin man, the muffin man. Like silly, you literally something that made you feel some type of way before doesn't make you feel any type of way. This works wonders with kids that's bullied. Now, what I want you to do real quick is think about a memory that you visually see that still disturbs you, and let me know when it's in your mind. Don't tell me what it is, but let me know when you're seeing it and it makes you feel a way that you don't want to feel.
See it.
You see it? All right. Now, all right. What's your name again?
Saucony.
Saucony. So,
Yeah.
are you seeing a Saucony experience it, or are you kind of seeing out of your own eyes like you're reliving it?
I'm seeing it as my younger self. I'm seeing it as Coney, which is the name that my mother used to call me.
Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to imagine stepping outside of it, and I want you to watch a younger Saucony experience it, and let me know when you did that.
Okay. Okay.
Now I want you to make it black and white, and let me know when you did that. Take all the color out and just make it black and white.
Got it.
Now what I want you to do is imagine turning it upside down on its head, so you're watching a Saucony across the room in black and white, upside down, experience it.
Okay.
Now imagine it making it smaller and smaller. And as it's getting smaller and smaller, imagine it going further and further in the distance to its little dot in the background.
Okay. I've done that.
Now imagine God coming through with like a huge flamethrower and just burning up the last little emotional remnants. And let me know when the smoke clears.
Okay, this is creepy, but yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the emotional charge of the memory before we did it?
Terrifying,
On a
honestly.
scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 10.
Yeah, it was a 10.
And now on a scale of 1 to 10, what is it now?
I would even say a 1, in fact, maybe a half.
And see, that's the power of these particular things, because a lot of times what holds us back is we don't want to reveal either what we did or what happened to us that's causing those negative feelings. But with that one, I don't have to know anything. I don't know what the person said to you that made you feel a certain type of way, nor do I have to know what you actually witnessed or experienced that made you feel a certain type of way. We just need to know the structure of it, because the structure is almost like when we got the CDs back in the day. When you looked on the back, it had the little rings, and the rings was the patterns on how to get to track 7 or track 6 or whatever your favorite song was. But when you scratch that joint, it would skip. And if you kept scratching, the song wouldn't play at all. It's the
Right.
exact same thing. Once we got a structure of a memory, that's what generates the feeling. It's the structure of how we actually structured and think about it. But when you start
Okay.
scratching that particular structure, auditory, you change the voice of it, that scratches it. Now you can't get to that feeling no more. Visually, because excitation transfer, your brain can't tell the difference between what you vividly imagine and an actual experience. So every time you rethink about a memory and you're seeing out of your own eyes, like you're reliving it, your nervous system is taking it as if it's happening in real time. So when you
Exactly.
step out and you watch a Saucony over there, that's a scratch. When you make it black and white, that's a scratch. When you turn it upside down, scratch. Make it smaller, scratch. Push it all the way in the back, scratch. God coming through with the flamethrower, that's a scratch. You get to the point where you can't get to the feeling anymore.
Wow. Wow. That's worth the price of admission right there. That's worth the price of admission. Man. Listen, if nobody else on this has been helped, I have. And I want to thank you again. Hey, real quick, man, I got to run this other commercial, and then we're going to come back and we're going to find out how people can follow you and connect with you. And then we're going to have you share with us any last thoughts. But now we have to hear from our sponsor, BetterHelp. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who's had years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. You can do it all from your phone or your computer, via a phone call, a video chat, or messaging. However you feel most comfortable. It is the easiest possible way to start talking to a therapist. You'll be matched to a therapist usually within 48 hours, so you can get started fast. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/SaconiPrinceHeal or choose Saconi Prince Heal during your sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. And again, we want to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. And we can't help but thank our guest, none other than Mr. Chris McBride. I do want to add these last couple of comments here. Well, one says, yes, with Dr. Danya, yes, this. One also says, reparent yourself. Dr. Danya said, yes, to restructure. Just like instead of saying, I got to say I get to, and that changes the whole dynamic of a situation. One also said that that's deep and scary, but I'm telling you in real time, and I'm assuming Juan did that exercise too. I definitely could see how the emotion of that, because immediately when I thought about it, I felt like I'm there in the room, and I was looking at it from the eyes of me. But then as I was coached by you to be, to in fact root myself and just observe it and then make all the changes to it, it took the emotions out of it. So yeah, so true. So listen, man, tell us, how can anybody connect with you, follow you, see what you're doing, what you have going on?
Yeah, so my handle's right there, McBride Institute. You can check me out on YouTube. You can check me out on TikTok. Definitely check me out on Instagram. I also offer a free healing discussion call or discovery call. So it's 45 minutes where, we just ask a whole bunch of questions, help you make different type of connections, give you a certain different type of solutions. And at the end of it, we can leave it at the free 45 minutes, or you can actually book coaching sessions with me. I don't do individual sessions. I typically do bundles because, there's a whole bunch of work. I don't like when people just, come and just, we do one thing and then you right back in therapy a couple months later or a couple years later. It's like, I want you to be completely equipped with everything you actually need going forward once you actually finish with me. So I always encourage people to click the link in my bio to be able to schedule that free 45-minute healing discovery call.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, are there any last minute or any last words that you have for our listeners?
um, Kind of just reiterating what you said earlier, where it's like your trauma may not be your fault, but because you're the one that has to live in your environment, you know,
Yes.
your healing is your responsibility. And that, you're not doing any, you're not hurting anybody by holding on to the particular trauma, by holding on to that particular anger. You're really just hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself biologically, you're hurting yourself socially, you're hurting yourself spiritually, you're hurting yourself mentally, emotionally, all of these different things by holding on to it. So sometimes that may give feel like you have perceived strength by holding on to these things or telling people off and doing all these other, but it's like ultimately it just makes us suffer. So my last words will be, your healing or your trauma may not be your fault, but your healing is definitely your responsibility. You deserve to live in a peaceful environment, not just your external environment, but your internal environment where you have peace of mind, where you have a sense of fulfillment, where you have that sense of self-love, where you feel like you are worthy of certain things and you deserve certain things and you're capable of doing the things that you desire. But as long as you're holding on to that hurt, that pain, you will continue to sabotage. I had a mentor who was Chris McCoy. He was an Olympic track runner and he was doing the hurdles. And he actually lost 3 Olympics in a row. He was in first place the whole time. And then he took his mind off and hit a hurdle. Took his mind off and hit a hurdle. And it's like, that's what that self-sabotage will be. He won his 4th time going to the Olympics because he was able to keep his mind focused on the main thing. But as long as you're carrying all that junk with you, you could be right at the finish line. You're going to hit that hurdle and you're going to sabotage the things that you want.
That's true. That's true. I think Dr. Donnie said you have a new follower. So, hey, man, good work, good job. Hey, listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of the H.E.A.L podcast. I want to again thank our guest, Mr. Christopher McBride of the McBride Institute. You can definitely check him out on all of the social media handles. It should be around this video, and just hit him up. I'm telling you, when I saw his video, it impacted me to the point where I was like, I got to reach out to the guy and have him on my podcast. But as always, before I wrap up, I definitely want to remind everybody, not only am I blessed, I get to talk about inner child trauma, inner child wounds, inner child healing, but I also get to share with people about their need for personal development and leadership development. So I've been closing out my show with my sizzle reel. So y'all check this out, and we'll see you in the next episode. Well, my name is Saucony Prince of SauconyPrince.com, where we make motivation personal by introducing you to yourself. I'm a motivational speaker, a trainer, and a coach. I'm also an author. I help people in the area of personal development and leadership development because I believe that you can't lead others until you learn how to lead yourself. But once you learn how to lead yourself, the next logical step is that you lead other people.
Saucony Prince is the best keynote I've ever seen.
He really encouraged me so much.
He has this ability of seeing in people what they don't see in themselves.
He was so confident. When he was coming to the stage, you could see like, wow, this is a lion.
Any actor that's going for a role, they do a case study. If I'm going to be a fry cook, I go to a restaurant and watch people that are fry cooks. If I'm going to be a mob boss, I go and, well, maybe not go to with a mob, but you take some notes as to what they do. Our children are watching. What can they reference when they step into our shoes? I do what I do because I believe that people have truly yet to understand their purpose. Once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. But until you know who you are, anything can. So my goal is to really help people to understand their purpose and their calling. And oftentimes they have the answers themselves, but they're not asking the right questions. So I help people to get to that place to where they look at themselves, they step back and they see how they've been a help to those around them and what really drives them. And from that, they really understand the value of it. They learn to value their value and see what value their value brings. Because a lot of people, they have yet to do that. Until you know who you are, anything can stop you. But once you know who you are, nothing can stop you. I want you to understand that you are blessed. That you are blessed to be a blessing. That there is somebody looking up to you. They're looking at you. Don't ever forget that. Because if you ever do, you're going to leave them without a mind.
I've learned so much and I've experienced a lot of interactions with people.
The practical approach, like you can't just sit down there, you have to walk up to an opportunity. Sometimes you have to grab the opportunity. Sometimes you have to fight for the opportunity. There's so much life lessons.
I think from today onwards, I'll stretch out and reach to higher levels.